All right. Sorry about the technical difficulties, and anyway, it's working now. Thank you very much again for coming to my session, and today is the second one, a second webinar of our React Summer Challenge. And I wanted to give thank you for all for who have participated for this event, and you guys actually submitted the assignments. I think there are I roughly counted there are like 25 submissions for the assignments for the first webinar. Let's give all of those who have submitted the assignments virtual round of applause. At least you can hear my applause. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'm really impressed by your passion. And what you have achieved. And for those who have not got a time, or if you find something that's not working yet, so feel free to work on the assignments, and feel free. Don't be shy to ask questions in Slack or email me or anything. And the point for this challenge is for you to learn. And I think we're at different stage of we're on at different stages on our route. So just let us who are a little bit ahead of you help you, and the goal is to help everybody, uh, so that you can create some cool stuff, cool effects or prototype in code. So don't be shy to ask questions, and just whenever you need help, or whenever like you have something to show, and just post it on Slack, and we're very eager to see what you create. Okay, so let me switch to the screen share now. All right. So first of all, I wanted to highlight some of the assignment submissions. So those are some of you who have completed the assignments and who have done a lot of great work. And I'm gonna just showcase some of the first who have put your assignment result in Slack. And as I promised, I will try to make some comments, so that if there's anything that I know that can be improved, I'll share it with you very quickly. And the first one is, I think, from his or her Slack name, Fabrizio. Sorry about the name. I'm always bad at names, but this is a very impressive. This is inside framer, but you got toggle, and who looks a lot. This toggle looks a lot cooler than my original toggle, and with different colors even. I think this checkbox as well, different sizes, very cool. And you can, I think it's the very first submission in the Slack channel. If you can see it, it's all the way to the top. It's the very first one, so you can have a look and how all this is done. And the second one is from Nish. For I choose this one because there is some stuff that I even did not cover, but I think somehow he found and make it work, and it's working very nicely. So this one is actually, let me make sure you actually can see. I'm not gonna make the same mistake that I made last time. All right, you can all see the text, right? Make it even bigger. Okay, so that's all the code here. And there's one piece that I want to highlight is like this style thing. And this is the way how you can style a div or whatever HTML element in React. You basically, the way is that you put a object. This is an object, right? Inside the style attribute, and the rest is pretty much like CSS, except that there are some differences. For example, you will need a double quote for some of the things, and you will need something like this font size instead of like font size in CSS, like that. So I think in CSS it's like this, like semicolon, but in React, or if you want to style it this way with this style attribute, you use a JavaScript object. So that's why you have all those kind of a different way of expressing pretty much the same thing. Yeah. So, and also the other thing is the use of an object inside a use cycle. I didn't cover that at all in my last webinar. So I only used the number, like I think I used 060 or something. But you can totally put a list of object here as well. So the difference is that if you use object, you can directly put this thing into the animate attribute. Or like if you just put numbers 060, like I've done in the previous webinar, and you will have to make an object, inside, like that, right? So again, this is an object, and if you call the cycle function somewhere, it will if you call the cycle function on tab, it will cycle through those values you passed in as a parameter. So 060 and back to 0 and go to 60. And the same thing for like if you put an object inside. If you put an object inside, the result, the twist is going to be an object. So you can always put a console log to see what it is, right? So it's going to return an object, and that is why we can delete this, because twist is already an object. So the benefit of that is you can definitely specify multiple things in each object, and it'll cycle through this different objects. First this guy, and second line number 8, and back line number 7, and so on and so forth. That is cool. And I think this checkbox. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this one. Yeah, I cannot actually size it. Anyway, so that's that way you can see it better. Okay, so in my webinar, I did not use this format. This is actually a planned content that I wanted to cover today, but kudos for those who have already used it in their assignment. It's a concise way of basically it is pretty much the same as if we just declare this, we have this one, right? Const cycle result 1, and if I put everything here, okay. So this one line number 8, is exactly the same as the 3 lines. Of course, this the first line looks much better. So the idea of this one, the term for this is called array destructuring. And the idea is that you can pretty much use the same format as if you're writing an array to define new constant. So over here, opacity is going to be it's going to equal to the first element in the array, and the cycle opacity is going to equal to the second element in the array. And I like the other name, and I think one of the community member kind of suggested, like, cherry picking. Much easier to say than this destructuring. All right, cool. And this one is from Len. I think the reason, it's a pretty nice looking radio button. It's not a checkbox. And the only comment that I have is like the oh, actually, yeah. Let me cover this one. Let me say this one first. The only comment that I have for this code is that the name of the variable. If you name it init, it might be confusing later on when you look at your code again, or maybe to other people, because this is not the initial state for the cycle. It is actually the kind of animation or something like it. If you want to say it animation, I think it'll make more sense than init. And the point that I want to make is that you want to pay attention to the names that you use, and of course, like names are actually very difficult to get right, but we want to get it right as much as possible. And at least the one criteria is that when you write your code and you go you just stay away, look away, and then look at your code again, and at that point you can still remember what you are talking about. So the name of the things in your code is very important. And she actually used a different technique that I didn't cover at all in the last webinar. It's something called variance. So you see that in, I think, this one, sorry. The very first one. Yeah, this one. So the very first one, we can put different like list of objects in use cycle, right? What Len was using is to put like in this use cycle line 13, just names, right? Just some names, and then for each name you can give it an object. So that's a very nice way to group different states of the animation. And so you have like whenever you have this variant, and you can refer it by name, and then so over here, the way to use it is that you use line number 32. You use this variance attributes and use it like that, and then you will be able to just refer it by name. And the benefit is that like this actually not only works for just single element, it also works if you have a lot of the things inside inside the frame. You have a one frame, another frame, and a third frame or whatever. If you are all inside one frame, you can maybe I should give a better example. Yeah, actually, let's look at this one so that I'll give you a quick demo of this. This is events code, and he's using, variants as well. And this is how it looks like. We click, and it's gonna move the knobs to the right, and also change the background color. So all of a lot of interesting things going on here. And so the first frame is the container, so it's the track, and the second frame I think is the knob. Okay, on both frame we have this variant. So this on the track we have a track variant, which is set to, on the track variant we're going to change its color, and on the knob variant, we're going to change the X location, scale, box shadow, etc. And now I think so this animate is used on both frames. What I was trying to say is that you can actually just use a single animate. So you don't really need this, and you only need this one single animate. It will like whenever you change this this track current, it's going to change its child, like all its children as well. So in that sense, you can just use one cycle, and it'll still work the same. And this is probably not so obvious. Like the benefit is probably not so obvious, but again, if you have many levels of things inside the frame, you can very easily to just toggle one thing, to just toggle this one variable, and you will be able to apply different kind of animation on different components. All right, and there is a last one from Lacan. I think sorry if I mispronounce your name. And I like the way how this transition is defined, like very very precise definition of like customization of the animation. And there is one comment that I have for Lacan's solution is the untap over here. You see, for the code that I have written, for example, like this one, we put yeah, this one I didn't actually cover. This is something called arrow function, but it's just a fancy way of writing a function like that. Just it's pretty much the same. So but nevertheless we put a function inside, and then we call the cycle function. But in Lacan's code, he just put this cycle x, and it still works. It works because cycle x is a function, and it's invoked. It's called whenever we tap on it. And the issue about this one is that like sometimes let me just finish this one first. And it's because this untap function, when it is called, and like it comes with a parameter like that. Sometimes you probably want this parameter. So if you like if you just directly put the cycle X inside untap, you will lose the opportunity to use that parameter. So as a convention, normally we will just use this. But of course, if you don't care about this event parameter, you can just remove it and it'll work the same as before. But you will soon see in today's or probably tomorrow's session that how we are going to use one of the parameter for this, not for untap or for undrag. Cool. So I think that covers a lot of the places that I didn't have chance to talk about. I might be going, a little bit faster than last time, but let's try this if this works or not. So I've talked about the I'm just looking at my notes. So I'm talk about this use cycle array destruction. Okay. Just a quick review. You guys still remember those pictures, right? Functions are recipe, functions are machine, and React components, it's like printers. React is repeatedly calling this, running this printers and get the snapshot and make a flipbook. And this one is particularly important to remember. Although we haven't really covered all the subtleties about this picture, but we will look at it one at a time, hopefully during this month. And let's see what we are going to build today, right? Show you this one. Yeah, this is what we are going to build. But okay. All right. So we're going to build this slider. And also we're going to just see how we can use this slider to change something. Oops. Yeah, so that's something that I'll talk about. You guys remember Mr. Skinny or not? So it's so he's really trying to lose weight, so we're gonna try to help him. This is weird, but I'll show you. I'll show you how to avoid that problem. Okay, let's just start by again creating a new sandbox. I guess I'm gonna have to code sandbox, create a sandbox, and pick React. And now, in order to use all the framer stuff, we will need to get that bag of Legos, right? Don't forget this. I see some people ask in Slack why import framer does not work. And likely you probably forget to add this dependency. So add that and make sure it has appears in this list. Then let me make the font even bigger. Okay, now let's start making the slider, right? So let's import frame again from framer and get rid of all the text here and put a frame inside a frame. Again, the same story as a toggle. Now set the size of the frame. inner frame, we want it to be like 60, border radius to 30, so that it's a circle. And the outside, it's a little bit different than the toggle, so it's 280, and the height is pretty thin, so we want it to be 15. And the border radius, again, we want it to be like kind of rounded, so it's something like this on the right. And now we want to move it to the center, right? So there is a way to move it to the center. I have seen some of you have already used it. So center equal to y. So that's how you can move things to the center of its parent. And the same thing for the whole thing, we can center it over here. Because of the, I think because of the browser zooming, it's not centered. I think this is going to be centered. Yeah, so maybe I'll just change the font size instead of changing the zooming. See if that's big enough. From my view, seems to be okay. Yeah, let me know if it's still not viewable. I made this mistake last time. Okay, now we've got a thing that roughly look like a slider, and you know what, we want to change the background color of the whole page, and there is a styles.css file, and we can actually make changes over there. This is gonna just be CSS, just plain CSS. Let's change. Let me just copy this code here. Change this background, and it'll be like that. And this works because we have this line number 4. We have this import styles.css. If we don't have it, it won't work. So remember to have that. And now let's maybe change the colors of those both frames. Background color to white. And also the knob, we want it to be white as well. And we can add some shadow on the knob. So we can say shadow, and it's let me just copy this text over here. This shadow, again, it's the border shadow as the same as CSS. Now that's starting to show some promise, right? Now we want to make it draggable, so we want to drag it around, and it's surprisingly easy actually. So we can just add a drag over here, and now it's draggable. So it goes everywhere you drag it. And of course, we don't want this kind of free form dragging stuff. We wanted to limit it to only the horizontal, like X direction. So we can say that equal to X. So now it's like that, and I'm not able to no longer be able to drag it in the right direction. And by the way, when I say drag, it's a kind of shorthand. It is the same as this guy. So the value over here is a Boolean value, true. So over here, instead of this, and which is going to be, you can drag it anywhere. We want to limit it to only the Y direction. Sorry, X direction. Yeah, the X direction. Now, now we don't want to be able to drag it outside of the slider, right? There's another prop, drag constraints, and again the same format, equal curly brackets, and then inside it's gonna be an object, and the object The key, as I mentioned, is a list of a name value pairs, right? So one of the name is that we want is left, and we say left 0. So this way I can drag it. For some reason, maybe I make any typos or anything. Drag. Let me finish typing this and see if it helps or not. Right. Oops. Huh? What is going on? Drag constraints. Yeah, so I made a typo. Yeah, so I'm sure like this is I mistyped this constraints, but it did not complain to me. This is a kind of a confusing thing. So whenever you have like you thought you make it correct, but it does not work. So the first thing you want to check is typos. Like now I've got a type. This is correct, and I can still drag it to the left, but it'll bounce back, and also on the right as well. And so you specify the constraint for left and right, and you can make it behave a lot more like what you want it. And but still, like we still don't want this to happen, right? So drag elastic. Make sure that I spell everything correctly. False. So I cannot drag it to outside of its boundary. Right. So that's drag elastic, line number 25. But still, like it's kind of weird if I can actually kind of grab it and throw it to the left or throw it to the right. So it's probably not what we want either. So that's another attribute, momentum. Okay, we want to set it to false. Okay, so I cannot throw it like that. So it behaves more like a real slider. That's pretty cool, right? Okay, now let's just go over it, what we have just done. We add a few drag related attributes, and so that we can actually make it draggable. But inside this curly brackets, like I mentioned, there's curly brackets, so kind of like placeholders to be filled, and we put in value, right? We put in different kind of values, and this is quoted text. The actual technical term in JavaScript is this is a string, so it's a string like that. Okay, so whenever you see this quoted text, let's call it a string from now on. So this is a string, and this is an object, right? And this guy is kind of different. It just it does not have. It's not like this, right? It's just bare false, and this is something called Boolean value. Boolean value, and they can have only two possibilities: true or false. So if it's true, it'll allow us to drag this outside. See, and for some reason it does not come back. But we want to set it to false. Okay, and also we can just have just single attribute here. This is equivalent to true, right? So you can grab it anywhere. And then, and again, this is not the same as quoted true, because you just mean that word letter by letter, true, the string. Okay, so that's our slider, right? Let's change it back to X. Okay, that's a slider. Now we want to make it to actually, want to actually use it to control something. So let me copy some code over here, and this is the final result actually. Okay, just grab this code. And put it just right above. Remove this. Okay, we've got a Mr. Skinny here. And it just display a few images. And this is for the whole body. And this guy, I think, is for his cheek. So if I comment now, I don't have his cheek anymore. And now the goal is to use the slider to control the size of his cheek. How do we do that? There are a number of new things. Okay. Yeah, I just noticed the time. So actually, let's just take a 5 minutes break, and when we come back, I will add this undrag action, and we will continue from there. Okay. So we'll be back on 10:47. All right, so we're back. Let me change the zoom back. Okay. Now the goal is to add to make those two things talk to each other whenever I move the slider, and we'll make some change over here on the top, right? To make that happen, we want to add one more attribute over here, line 41. We can add undrag. Okay, the same format, and a pair of curly brackets. And what's inside is similar to untap, so we're gonna need to put in a function. Put in the function there, and over here we want to just change the scale of the cheek, right? So that will help Mr. Skinny look better. So actually we can, for this undrag, we can see like Framer has something like that, undrag. If you bigger, so this is undrag, right? So undrag, we can add something like that, and this undrag is a function that has two parameters, event and info. Like I mentioned previously, I talked about for the untap, we can access that event parameter as well, right? So for this undrag, we can access those two parameters, and actually the one after is the one that's more interesting to us most of the time, I think. So let's actually use that. So the first parameter is event, the second parameter is info. And by the way, the names do not have to be this. Actually, you can name it anything, like anything you want. But of course, if you want your code to be readable, you better choose a better name. So let's just use the same name that Framer API doc says, and we're gonna use info because it's the information about the dragging event or dragging action that we are doing here. And like what we did before, we can use how do we debug that? We use console, not debug. How do we actually understand the program? We can use console.log, right? Let's just check out what info looks like whenever we drag the slider. So you see. Okay, let's show you the console, and possibly this is a bit too small. That's very big. Anyway, I don't know if you can see it, the zooming effects. I think you can see it, right? Cool. Right. So every time when I drag, it actually returns an object. And this object has a whole bunch of things: point, delta, offset, velocity, etc. If we expand that, we see those three things, and each of the thing here, the value is again an object. So for example, this point, it has x and y, right? So I'm just to tell you that like this point is actually what we wanted, and the delta and offset is about something else, and velocity is like the speed that you drag of your drag, right? But we're gonna just use this point for now. Okay, so the way how we can access those x and y is this something called dot notation, object dot notation. Object dot notion actually. So it's basically for like if we got an object and it has a key called point, we can say info point dot point, and we can keep doing so. Like if we want to access the x location of the slider, right? We can say dot. Yeah, actually, let me just leave it as is for now, and let's drag it and see what it looks like in the console. So it's got object, you know, it's got an object with x and y. Yeah. Anyway, with x and y. Okay. So that's the point object that I just showed you, and by doing this dot thing, we grab that object out of the original object. And now, if we want to have this x value, we can keep going. We can just add a dot over here like that. And now we'll only get a number. And this number is exactly the number that we want to use to control the picture above, right? Okay, let's close that. And now I have a question. What is this console? So it's like if you look closely, it's kind of like kind of have the same format as the other, right? And if you think that way, you are correct. This console is just an object, and the reason why we can say console dot something is because it's an object. It has has a key. It's called log. Yeah, and that's right. It's a global object. I didn't define it anywhere. It comes with JavaScript, so we can always use this console dot log, and you can always do this. Console log dot console. You can check out what that console looks like. You know, it's a whole bunch of things. It's a whole bunch of things, right? But it's an object. All right, so we're gonna use this. We're gonna use info dot point dot x, and this point is how far you have dragged the knob. All right. So actually, there are multiple ways of implementing this behavior, but right now I'm just showing you one of them. We, if we have time, maybe later on in the next section or something, like I can talk about other ways. But now let's focus on this on drag. So now the idea is that we want to somehow change something that will affect this cheek over here, line number 16 to 22. So this is a cheek, right? So we want to somehow change it, and the way to use it is that, like, if we want to make any animation, we can, again, we use this animate, right? And of course curly brackets, and I have shown you that we can use x or maybe scale like that, and we can also use like a string if we use the variants, right? Maybe later session where I may and probably will dive into that variants. But other than those two things, we can also put in something called animation controls. Okay, So of course, right now it says it is not defined, and let's define it. It is something special over here. So line number 7, let's define it as a constant again. Name it as animation control. And we're going to use something like a use animation. Okay. So this use animation, we need to import it from Framer. It's similar to that use cycle, and this is a use animation. And similarly, it is a function. So we put a pair of parentheses after. So we call it, get its result, which is the animation control. And we use that to populate, this animate attribute in the frame, line number 23. Okay, again, we define this animation control whose value is the output, is the return value of this use animation. We call it over there, and it'll return something for us to control the animation. So it's basically animation for Skinny's cheek, right? Now, this is just one part of it, one part of the story. The other part is to actually control this control. So that's why we need to go over here, undrag. Whenever we drag the slider, I'm gonna need to make some changes to the control, to the animation of the cheek. So let me show you how we are gonna do it. So here we can actually directly use this animation control. Now we can say start, and we're gonna give it a an object, and let's say scale like that. Okay. Again, this actually, this is a question, question for you. What's this? It's an object. Again, almost everything is an object in JavaScript. It's an object, and it has a key. We can call it start, so that's why we can say dot start. And the value of this start is actually a function, so that we can put a pair of parentheses after to call this function to make some effect, to make some animation. And this function has a parameter which is supposed to be an object, right? So again, object, and we can get one of the function inside the object, and we call it with some input, which is an object again. Do you remember I mentioned that computers are very precise, and their language is very logical. Is that there are a lot of repetitive patterns that we can use over and over again. Once you understand the principles, you will be able to understand a lot of it by just applying this patterns over and over again. And this is kind of one of the example of this. From just this line, you will be able to see that this is an object, and this is the function, and you can put this is an object. And also about those variants, or those use cycle, you can put objects inside. Once you can recognize those patterns, and you will be able to understand the code a lot better, right? So now I start the animation whenever I drag the slider. See the effect, right? So I'll show you again. Whenever I start dragging, it becomes scale number 2. The cheek is becoming much bigger. So that is
pretty much the essence of how this animation control works. So the idea is that you can just hook up the animation over here in one part in your code, or one component of your code, and you can use that handle to control the animation from another part, from another part of the code. So in our case, is this onDrag. We can use that to communicate to control the animation of the other parts in our picture. Now, of course, this is not exactly what we want yet. We want to be able to change the scale with the slider, right? So the idea is that we're gonna have another thing from. So actually, let me just go back over here. So basically, the idea is that we already have the scroll location of the knob, right? We want to somehow convert it to a scale value that makes sense, right? We want to convert it to that. So the number over here, so the x number, if we do the console.log, we can see that it's somewhere between 0 and 22, 220. That's because we set the constraint of it, so it's x, and it's going to be in that range. But for the scale, we cannot directly put this number there, right? Otherwise, Skinny will go crazy. Yeah. And he's gonna go crazy from 0 to 222 times of his original cheek. Of course, we can use math to do that, to convert this value to this to the target value. Like for the scale, we probably want to convert it from slightly smaller than original, and slightly bigger than the original. And over here, the range for that is 0 to 22, right? So we want to do this conversion. We can do it by just math. But of course, Framer provides an easier way, is something called transform, line number 3. And again, it is a function, and we can call it from within this onDrag function. So we can say, scale value equal, we're going to call this function transform, and put in the original value that we want to convert from, and putting the range of this original value. And the third parameter is the range of the output value. So just like that, we just avoid doing some math. So it's a very easy way to convert a value to another value. And again, like this is a function that takes 3 parameters, 3 input, first, second, and third, and they're all separated by commas. Okay, now the output we get is the actual scale value that we want, that is tied to the progress of this slider. Now we can use it to start the animation, line number 49, to be like that. Let's see if it works. Okay, so this one is the thing that I want to talk about. This is seems like a bug in this Framer, the latest version. If I actually, there are 2 ways of fixing that. Way number 1 is to, instead of using onDrag, I can use onDrag end. So it will only run this function whenever I release the mouse. So that will, avoid this issue. See, it behaves a lot better, right? But if that's not what you want, you want to be able to preview the change before releasing the mouse. You can change the version of Framer to 1.6, which does not have this issue, and we can use undrag, and I think that should work. Okay. All right, so that's undrag, and okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to show you as well, and whenever we have an object like this, line number 49, it's kind of repetitive, right? Scale, comma, scale, because like the first one is the key or the name of the property inside the object. The second one is actually the value, which is a variable or constant that we defined over here, line 48. So in this case, we can make it shorter actually. You probably have already seen, if you check out my solution for the first webinar's assignment, and have something like that. I actually forgot to convert it to this more traditional look, because like it's so convenient, and I tend to use it a lot. You can just get rid of this one, and it'll be equivalent to scale. And of course, if you name this one differently, scale 2, you will get an error because it does not recognize the constant anymore. So in that case, you will have to use this, right? So of course, like for convenience, we can just name it like that and save some typing. All right, so this yeah, so the actual technical term for this one is called object literal shorthand. It's a pretty mouthful name. So the technical term for this feature of JavaScript is like this. So in case if there's something that does not work, you can search by this term. Okay. All right. So now we got 20 minutes left. I think I will be able to finish this actually. Okay. So so far this is actually working, right? So when I drag, I can see his cheek is changing. And now I have a question which is related to the picture that I showed you, the printer picture over here, right? So I said a React component returns a snapshot. And the question is, when I make one move over here, how many snapshots does this component return? Yeah, so this component. So the answer is that there's only one snapshot. You can actually prove that by putting a comment like a console log here, snapshot. Okay, and the first time we get a snapshot, and whenever I drag, we don't get any snapshot. So, but why this is working? So this is something that might confuse some people. Is because the animation stuff, it kind of works differently than the use cycle that we use, and I'm gonna cover more about the states of React components, and by that time you will understand this better. But the idea is that like whenever we do an animation, we don't get a new snapshot. There's only one snapshot. This is for performance reason, so that our animation is smooth, without any any issues. Like whenever we can drag fast as we can, it's still smooth, right? So there is only one snapshot, which is the initial one. Okay, just keep in mind, we'll come back to this later. Okay, now we've got this working, but the code is starting to look kind of like Supergali, and there's a lot of things here. How many lines we have? Like 40, 58, 50, yeah, 57 lines of a component code. And I wanted to kind of show you that there's a way to kind of clean it up, and by that we can also learn one of the new concept of React. um, Basically we have two parts in our code, right? So everything below is that slider, right? So these two frames, these are sliders. These are that slider, and over here, line distinctive things about React is that we can define custom tags. Like this frame is a custom tag that is just defined in Framer, and we just import it, and so that we can use it. And it turns out that it's as easy to define our own custom tag as well. So, for example, for this guy, Skinny, we can just use this one, Skinny, like that, if we define this custom tag. Now let's go ahead and define it, which is actually pretty easy. So again, what is a React component? It's a printer, and it is a function. So we start by writing a function, and the name of the component has to start with the uppercase letter. So Skinny, and a pair of parentheses, and the curly brackets, and then we can return a snapshot, right? So just copy whatever we have here. And oh, by the way, this is one of the places where you might see some errors. Like if you happen to paste the HTML tags or CSS tags over here, line number 8 instead of number 7. Ooh, screen is black. Sorry about that. I don't know what is going on. Let me check. All kinds of technical issues. Oh, Hangouts. Present to everyone. Can you see the screen now? What is going on? I think there might be some hiccup happening for Google Hangouts. Default. Present to everyone. From which point the screen is black? Can somebody remind me? Yeah, I can actually see it. Sorry about that. Oh. Yeah, the issue is that I cannot stop the broadcasting right now. If I stop and everything will stop, I can just try it again. If it does not work, maybe we will have to delay it to Friday. Sorry about that. Camera. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work today. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work today. But the good news is that I have covered most of the topics that I wanted to cover today, and I will put on the page for the assignments. And the parts that I haven't covered is about organizing the code in subcomponents. I will do that in I will do that on Friday's session. So it's supposed to be office hour. I think it's okay if we just do it like that way, and I can also answer questions on the same session. Um. Yeah. So I don't think I should keep trying this. It's just not working. I don't know why. Yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks a lot for coming to today's session. And again, the remaining part is about organizing making the code, in a better organized way, and I will talk about that on Friday. So awesome! Thank you. I'll stop the broadcast. I'll see you in Slack. Thank you. Bye bye.